All right, folks, I really appreciated the comments you added to our sample essay too. This is our sample essay for essay 2. I think it's in general is a pretty strong piece. There are certainly places it can be improved upon, but I think it's a reasonably strong piece. First, foremost, okay, a lot of you noted that this thing just starts off, just dives in with the author without a lot of background information, and I think you guys are absolutely right about this. I gotta note that there's no attention getter. I think the idea of the attention getter is often misplaced, right? We often are told, like, put some sort of interesting fact there or something. Well, that only works if what you're trying to do is about that interesting fact. I think the way to fix this, might be to start here with this information, right? Basically that our presumption is that drinking diet soda would help you lose weight. You know, swapping from diet soda to from regular soda to diet soda, or if you want to have a soda, drinking a diet one would help us lose weight. But the research on it is unclear, right? Because then it gives us some background information. Okay, so you guys are absolutely right. I think you're dead on that. This could be given a little bit more information. Now, I think you guys also noted, there were a lot of comments on this, that this sentence sort of like lays out the fundamental question that we're getting at here, which is, does diet soda help? It tries to create the juxtaposition between those two. And that's really what this paper is about. Like, what are we to take away from these two sources? Now, obviously, if your two sources are giving us information that is relatively similar, right? They come to relatively similar conclusions, we might do this a little bit differently. But if there's differences between them, we really want to explain in the introduction that juxtaposition. Okay, so a lot of folks talked about the thesis statement here. This is sort of a more traditional thesis statement, I think, in that it kind of lays out a couple different points that we're going to cover in the course of the essay. I'm not a huge fan of those thesis statements typically. I think it works well here. I think the key here, and Jada noted this, it gives us a hint. Okay, and I think the idea here is not that we're like, here is why these two essays are different, or how they came to differing conclusions. Okay, what we really want to do is sort of lead the reader on. Okay, so we give a hint about where we're headed, not necessarily lay out the rest of the essay for them. Okay, so we had a number of comments here actually about like how the studies were done, and like, oh, I think this was a good way to do a study. All of that is fine and good. I was thinking really about comments here on the essay that we've got in front of us. Danielle notes that she liked how they broke down the study Fowler performed over time, included details on who participated, the questions that were asked, and the results of the study. Absolutely. One of the things we see is that both this paragraph and this paragraph are really giving us a really strong explanation of how each study was conducted. That's something I'm going to be looking for in your papers. A really clear, strong explanation of the study that was conducted that you're investigating. Obviously here, the next thing we get is sort of a comparison. We start to see, well, this is where they differ, okay? And that ultimately is what we want to get to here, is like, well, how do they differ? And then how do we explain that, okay? You'll see a question here. No one commented on it, which I find interesting. But I think it's fine to use questions to lead your reader to the next thing, okay? This is what's literally called a rhetorical question. We always talk about rhetorical questions as questions that aren't answered, but that's not really it. It's a question that you're going to answer for them. And so you pose the question to make your reader think about it, and then you kind of walk them through the answer. And that's what's going on here. Why is there a huge discrepancy? Well, the next paragraph is going to explain it. There were a couple comments on this one. One said it was awkward. One noted it was odd the ordering because it states an opinion. No, it makes a claim, okay? And I want to make a real distinction between opinion, which is like whether or not chicken is good, okay? I enjoy chicken. That's an opinion, okay? This is a claim, right? That how Peters and his colleagues created his sample shows a problem. That's actually a claim, and it gets backed up by the information from the methods section here. And that is really analysis, right? We're doing some critique work here. And I think that's a key part of this essay. We don't want opinion, but we do want critique. We want people to, you guys, as you're becoming experts in these studies, be able to say, here's a problem with that study that impacts the outcome. Okay, that's key to the understanding, key to the central argument of the essay here. Marissa added this, like, does who funded the study take away from the integrity of the study? Maybe. In this case, we've got a lobbying group. Okay, so this is a company or an organization rather that lobbies on behalf of the soda industry. In other words, tries to get the government not to do things like regulate size of sodas, the amount of sugar in them, the sweeteners, all of those sorts of things. So it's a lobbying group, and I think that's really key. Why would a lobbying group pay for research? And I think it's critical if there is a group that's funding it that seems to have a specific focus that's questionable, it's something we want to talk about and see, does this have an impact? A lot of times the group that funds it might be just either the government, the National Library of Medicine supports these things, National Institutes of Health has a lot of grants. It might be like the American Cancer Society is funding a study. Well, they're probably trying to find an answer, not necessarily have a specific point of view, but when you've got a lobbying group that is funding it, they have a vested interest in the results, and I don't think they're going to support a study unless they believe that it's going to give them the results they want. Aura notes here, yeah, she likes how the author's work is continually compared, kind of pushing back and forth. And yep, absolutely, we definitely see that, and we're kind of trying to work our way through. Well, if we accept this, then what? Okay? I always like to think about writing as sort of a cone. You're moving to a final conclusion. You're moving to a final point, rather than just like evidence. You're actually trying to lead your reader to a specific place. And so we're working our way back and forth. We've just shown some evidence that Peter's work is really problematic because it was funded by an industry group. So then we have to ask the question, well, can we just dismiss it? And the answer to that is no, right? We can still figure out what we can tell from this. All right. Greg notes that obviously we get to see the difference between the studies here. Absolutely. I think the other thing I want to point out here is that we should get some comparison. We should see back and forth between those two studies to see sort of like what they did and what that tells us. There is one more thing. A lot of comments here. Montana noted this. Joe agreed with it here, that it didn't really conclude as to whether diet soda helped people lose weight. And that's absolutely true, okay? This essay does not come to a conclusion about that. And I think this is a really key point. A lot of times the conclusion we're going to come to, the right conclusion to come to, is going to be something gray. It's not white and black, right? It's something in the middle. What we can tell, and it's very clear, I think we've got the right answer here. Neither of these stories does answer the question. Neither of these studies answers the question. That's true, okay? They each give us a bit of information that helps us to understand it, but neither of them actually says, this right here is the answer, because those two studies can't give us the answer. And part of our job doing critique and doing analysis here is flat out to be able to say, this is when they can't tell us what we want, right? One of the things we see here is what the takeaway is, right? This study is, what it actually shows us is this, right? You might try to see it, you might take a look at it and say, oh, the broad thing, diet soda does or doesn't work. But what it actually shows is this more specific thing. And so it gives us these pieces of information, and we can take away those. But we can't take away an answer to that broader question because neither of them answers it completely. They each answer a small chunk of it. And it's perfectly okay for that to be your conclusion. There was a lot of critique here that we should have gotten a better, seen a better conclusion, a stronger conclusion here. No, like, what we want is the right conclusion. If the right conclusion is we can't tell from what we're presented here, that's perfectly fine. Okay. One of the things we'll work on this semester is embracing that gray area, recognizing when we just don't know the perfect answer, so we kind of have a bunch of good enough answers that we're going to work our way through. Okay? All right. So, just to fill you guys in, see who listens to the end of this, very end of this video, I wrote this essay specifically for this essay assignment, specifically so you guys would have a sample. Okay, so I do think it's pretty strong. The critiques I've noted that you guys came up with, absolutely dead on. There are lots of places it could be improved. But I do think it does a good job of looking back and forth at the two essays, two studies, trying to understand what it is they actually discovered given the way they were created. And then offering the reader some sort of takeaway. This is what we do know about this situation. This is what we don't yet know. This is what this research can't show us. All right? As always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to let me know.